to our Full Armor training television show called Program to Win. We're with Pennsylvania State Representative Scott Petrie, who is also a lawyer and who attended the University of Villanova, as well as a father. And I'd like to welcome you to our show.
Well, thank you.
Scott, you are aware of our training program, the Full Armor training program, Program to Win. How has that impacted you, your son? You had a brief viewing of it. Is there something that you took from that and was really important for you to hear as well as your son?
Oh, absolutely. That program, and by the way, my son and I watched it together along with my wife, and all three of us really felt strongly that this is something that is completely different than anything we've seen before. The piece of the mental game, you know, in today's world, youth sports, in my opinion, are so over the top sometimes. Parents overloading their kids with instructions from the baseball field, and I've been there and heard it. And you almost wonder, as the young man's on the mound or at the batter's box, how in the world can they even sort out what's going on in life? And so the ability to have a training tape to talk about the mental aspects of youth sports is so important. And I think we as parents can really learn the first thing, and that is maybe we're too involved. Maybe we need to take 3 steps backward. Maybe we need to let our children be children and compete. I remember being at a recent game where I actually heard another parent tell one of the players on our team that they were slow, that they were running too slowly, that they were loafing, and screaming at them.
Right, right.
What kind of negative energy does that put in that player, and how does that player feel about themselves?
Now, you're a basketball player.
I am.
Okay, and you played Division III program in college.
I did.
And you're currently a coach.
I am, all of those things, and I coach my son's team and have for a number of years. And while I do coach it, I also recognize that it's important for him to have other coaches and other people involved. And that, you know, again, as part of this training program has been very helpful to have somebody else who can step in there and say the things that need to be said, but it's not coming from the parent. But,
right. I will tell you that most of my sports that I played were football, baseball, soccer, a little bit of hockey. There was a brief stint that I did play basketball. My job was to make sure the best guy on the team didn't get the ball. I wasn't allowed to bring it up to court. I wasn't allowed to shoot, but that was my role. And I usually fouled out by halftime, or by the third quarter I was gone, but that was my role. So I didn't stay with basketball too long. I was forced to make a decision at that point. As you're coaching kids, and when you grew up, what is the difference that you're finding from when you played and what you're running into now with parents and the kids and their self-esteem? What's happening?
When you and I were young, and most of the parents of our age, you went and you played. And you just played in the local playground. And it wasn't formal. You showed up, and it was for fun. And you learn good things and you learn bad things, and you had the opportunity to try different things. Today, youth sports is very structured. You go to a specific place at a specific time. You don't see kids out there playing in the yards anymore, you know, or just playing in the neighborhood. And that adds pressure on these young men that we have to recognize that there's added pressure there. It's not just fun. I've been taking my son to pickup games just so he gets a chance to try things that a coach wouldn't allow him to try. Right. You know, just go out and play and try something new. So I think there's a little bit of structure here, which is good and bad. I think we're producing better athletes, but it becomes important for them to have a place where they can have trial and error. You can't just go out to a baseball field, for instance, and play and keep doing the same wrong things and expect a different result.
Right.
You need a place where you can have good instruction to say, okay, your mechanics in this area are weak, you need to improve. Same thing with basketball. The practice becomes extremely important to develop the good habits. And too many coaches, in my opinion, try to teach the high-level skills, and our young men have lost, and our young ladies have lost out on the fundamentals. So my emphasis as a coach is always on the fundamentals of the game. Basketball's interesting, in my opinion. I think it's less difficult mentally than many sports because basketball's instantaneous. I can shoot an air ball, go down, play defense, steal the ball, and so 10 seconds later, I went from doing something really bad to something really good. Baseball and some other sports, sometimes it's a mental toughness that they have to have. You're a pitcher and you just walked the batter. So I'm first. Next thing you know, next pitch he's at second. Next pitch he's at third. And so in youth sports, now the pitcher's saying, oh my goodness, he throws a good ball across the plate, little single, they make the throw at first, but the run scores. How does the pitcher shed that and say, okay, well, it wasn't really my fault, it's part of the game, you know, we need to move on.
Well, let me ask you to comment on something that I'm aware of that happened a month or two ago, and it involves your own son, who is a baseball player. Can you share that story again of what you asked your son to do and how he responded and where he is today because of it?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and I guess I could say that I set him up to some degree, but I didn't. I did not want him to have any real sense of concern or urgency. I told him he was being taken to be evaluated at your facility, which was true. But I did not tell him anything about the facility. I didn't tell him anything about the level of expertise that he was anticipating. I didn't want him to walk into a room and say, oh, I'm going to be evaluated by someone who is at the highest level of baseball as far as evaluating talent. Right. So I didn't tell him anything. And we walk down the alley, and we walk into the facility. And, you know, you're there, and you're casually dressed. You know, you don't have the big red A on the with signal. Right. You don't have this look about you as though you're in a suit and tie as you are today. So he had no expectation. And what I really liked was the ability to cut through, almost like a surgeon. And what happened was he took, you know, 3 or 4 ground balls. And we saw him hit. You saw him take 5 or 6 swings, 5 or 6 pitches. And then the most important part for me as a father and as a coach was sit down, okay, let's talk. And what happened for Drew that day was a little bit magical because, first of all, you asked, well, what do you want to do? You want to go to college? And I saw his look, and knowing him as the father, I knew he thought, what kind of question is that? Of course I'm going to go to college. Doesn't everybody go to college? But it was an important foundation. Right. And he said yes. And then you asked him, well, what level do you want to play baseball? And he said, honestly, and he told you forthrightly, I want to play Division I and, you know, maybe even in the major leagues. And then you went through things and you started to identify with his physical traits, what you'd seen plus his parents. And you cut out some of the fringe things that he was thinking. He told you that he could play center field, pitcher, and catcher. And the first thing you figured out was, you know, that catcher thing, if you're 6'5", 6'6", that's not where you're going to be. And okay, you've got a great arm. Mechanics, you know, a little bit shaky right now. We need to do some things with the mechanics. And you went through it, and I watched the interaction, and it wasn't his usual intensity. My son is extremely intense, and he's very hard on himself. And so the difficulty for me as a father is how do you not break that intensity and spirit, which I never had to that level, but foster it, but not let him beat himself up so that he's damaged. He's not physically damaged, I can't see it, but emotionally he has beat himself up. And let me just give a quick segue. When he was 8, he thought he could beat me, a former college player, in basketball, and I'm 6'9".
All right, difficult task.
Difficult task. That's the level of expectation, and I've seen it over the years in great athletes. So what ended up happening was he went through the process, you gave him some good information, we started to work. But as we started to work, I noticed he didn't have quite the level of intensity he showed in future sessions, and I know that he had. So when we got in the car, I knew the ride home was going to be a little tough. And so we're driving home, and I said, what did you think? And he said, oh, well, that college pitcher, he seemed like he knew, but I'm not so sure about that other guy. You know, does he really know what he's talking about? And I said, well, Drew, you set yourself up. He said, what do you mean you set yourself up? How did I do that? I said, you told him you wanted to play baseball at the highest level. And remember, he never said you couldn't do it. You just set the platform of where you wanted to be. And he said, okay, if that's where you want to be, that's where you want to go, this is what you're going to need to do. And Drew wasn't shaken by the work that needed to be done, but there was something you said, it wasn't anything severe along the way, that kind of caused the connections in his brain to filter a little bit. And then I said to him, do you realize this is a pro scout? Oh, no, he's not. No, he's not. I said, Drew, did you see the big red A on the bag? And this is really funny. He said, well, maybe he just bought that briefcase. I said, well, I guess you could, but he didn't. Yeah. And what that did was change the whole parameter. Had I told him that he was going to see a professional scout, he would have tried to over-prepare. He would have tried to overthrow. He would have been nervous. He would have gone in with expectations that I think would have been difficult. Right. And what that process did, that was the first day, in my opinion, of his beginning to reform his mind. And what we did then, or what you did, because I was just along for the ride as a father, you started changing those mechanics. And now the mechanics were easy. And what he has indicated to me is that the explanations that are given as to why we're doing it, why are we doing these things, are so helpful. And so as we go through the process and we're with the various pitching coaches and the like, he can apply what you told him in those early sessions and say, okay, I know why I'm doing it, makes sense, and I know why I need to do this. So it's been a real mental reformation, as well as a physical reformation on his form. Okay. His mechanics were, as we know, not so good, and they're much better. His velocity is up. His ability to filter is better. We're still going to have to do some work. But I know he's only 14, so